You're listening to the Quint's podcast.
COVID-19 is here to stay for longer than we could have imagined. While vaccine stocks in the world are nowhere near enough to keep populations across the globe safe from future surges. Keeping in mind the shortage of vaccine supply, countries have started to consider mixing and matching of different COVID vaccines, and the data so far seems promising according to experts. A recent study led by researchers at Oxford University found that mixing the Oxford-AstraZeneca and Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine is safe, although it could cause more severe, albeit temporary, side effects. Similar studies were also conducted in Spain, which also showed encouraging results. Countries like Canada, the UK, Bahrain, and the UAE have also started allowing the mixing and matching of vaccines to address the shortage of supply. However, researchers and experts in India are still on the fence about the issue, citing a lack of clinical data for the vaccines approved in India, which are the Oxford-AstraZeneca, which is also known as Covishield, Covaxin, and Sputnik V. So in today's episode, we'll take a closer look at what India's experts have to say to the suggestion of mix and match of COVID vaccines, whether it is safe, and given the severe shortage of vaccines that India is facing, should we consider it? To help answer these questions for today's episode, we spoke with Professor Gagandeep Kang, a renowned virologist with CMC Vellore, and Dr. Rakesh Mishra, the former Director of Council of Scientific and Industrial Research and an advisor to CEBM. You're tuned in to The Big Story, the podcast where we dissect the headline-making news for you, and I'm your host, Himmat. So let's start with what maybe is the biggest point of concern with mixing vaccines: safety. Of course, trials on mixing vaccines just recently began, and the long-term effects of mixing vaccines cannot be calculated. In the study led by Oxford University earlier this year, more than 800 adults aged 15 over were examined who had been given a mix of vaccines. The study revealed that when the doses were given at a 4-week interval, both the mixed schedules, which is the Pfizer vaccine followed by the Oxford-AstraZeneca vaccine and vice versa, induced more frequent reactions compared to the standard non-mixed regimen. However, the researchers have said that the adverse reactions were short-lived and there were no other safety concerns. Dr. Rakesh Mishra, who is the former director at CISR, believes that if vaccines are independently safe, then a combination should be safe as well. However, he questioned the need for mixing if there is no gain in the immune response to the body.
Mixing of vaccine, which we also call as the interchangeability of vaccine, is a interesting idea. In fact, the whole vaccine process is largely based on trials. Making of the vaccine is simple, but trials are most important, and they decide how the vaccine will be used, what should be the dose, what should be the gap, and so on. So, considering the virus like SARS-CoV-2, that they keep changing, you want vaccines also to have multiple ways of protecting the body, and one of the way possibly is to have multiple vaccines, and interchangeability of vaccine comes from that. The idea is that if you have initial dose one vaccine, booster or second dose another vaccine, and later some booster something, they might give better protection. But these are all the thoughts. Whether we should use them or not, they has to be decided based on the scientific data, and scientific data can come only when there is a proper trial designed in which vaccine will be used first, what will be used later, what will be the gap given. Preferably, those vaccines should be of different kind. For example, if one is protein based or DNA based, then others should be RNA based, and so on. So then it will provide more broader spectrum for the coverage. I understand that in some places, like in US or other countries, some small scale trials have been done and results are encouraging. So that's a good thing. But for a country like India, unless trials are done and the data is available, we have to keep using for what the data at present is available. As far as the safety is concerned, if a vaccine is safe by its own, it will be safe. It will certainly be safe as a combination as well, because vaccination is actually nothing but mimicking infection in the body. So if independently vaccines are safe, in combination also, or when used interchangeably, they will be safe. Safety is not a problem, but whether we gain much stronger immunity, whether by one dose of other one and another dose of other one, two half may not be equal to one, or two half may be equal to more than one. Only trials can tell. These are things that has to go with the scientific data. So it's a good idea, and it might be useful in certain combinations, but we should wait. We should I mean, we hope that a good designed trials will take place, and we will have in coming months more information, and then we can decide which is the best one, which combination, if at all, better than by themselves the individual vaccines.
Let's move to where countries stand on mixing and matching of vaccines. The United States on 1st June became the latest country to begin clinical trials to test the use of different COVID vaccines. Apart from the US, Canada, the UK, Bahrain, and UAE, and Spain have all either mixed the vaccines or given a different vaccine as a booster shot. Most first world countries have vaccinated a large section of their population. However, it is the low medium income countries which are struggling with vaccine shortages. Most vaccines supplied by the World Health Organization under its COVAX scheme are largely the Oxford-AstraZeneca vaccine, which is sourced from a single supplier, which is Serum Institute of India. But the Indian government halted vaccine exports after the second wave of infections in India exploded. Since 1st May, when the 18 to 44 age group became eligible for vaccines, states have been scrambling to inoculate the group amid a severe vaccine shortage, leading to most states pausing their vaccine drives or restricting vaccinations only for second doses. However, after heavy criticism from both the opposition states and the Supreme Court on India's vaccination policy, Prime Minister Narendra Modi announced on 7 June that the centre is going to take back control of inoculations and procurement of vaccines. As I stated earlier, India is still debating whether such mixing of vaccines should take place, and the concerns regarding the safety of this practice grew after 20 people in an Uttar Pradesh village were given a mixed dose of Covishield and Covaxin in May. The center so far has stated that significant adverse effects are unlikely if an individual's second COVID vaccine dose is different from their first. But is there any advantage in mixing vaccines? Can it work better than the original two doses? What do the UK and the Spain studies indicate? Professor Gagandeep Kang, a renowned virologist with CMC Vellore, breaks down the preliminary results of the studies and how to interpret the data.
It's important to recognize that most mix and match studies are done based on looking at antibody responses. They tend to be smaller in size than efficacy studies and look at antibody responses as a potential correlate of how the vaccines will perform in terms of efficacy. So the studies are usually in the several hundreds and not in the tens of thousands, as we've seen with the efficacy trials. These studies have already been planned and initiated. In the UK, we are expecting results on the immunogenicity from the UK study fairly soon, and the reactogenicity or the side effects data has already been published in the Lancet. So the UK study has many arms. They initially started with only looking at the two vaccines that they had in their program, which were the AstraZeneca and the Pfizer vaccines. And after that, they have added other vaccines into the mix of approaches that they are using, the Moderna vaccine, the J&J vaccine, which are being used now in the UK. The idea there is to get an immunogenicity readout. The reactogenicity results from the initial studies, as I said, are already available and show that you have an increase in side effects, minor side effects lasting only 2 or 3 days, but there is more if you mix and match doses than if you give two vaccines of the same dose. In Spain, we so far don't have formal published data on the Spanish study, but essentially what they did there was take people who had been given the first dose of the AstraZeneca vaccine. They had about 670, and a subset of them were given the Pfizer vaccine as the second dose. What they found was that if you looked at the binding antibodies, the IgG, that was many times higher in people who had received the combination, about 30 times higher binding antibodies. They also looked at neutralizing antibodies, and they found that if you used a combination, you got a 7 times increase when you gave AstraZeneca followed by Pfizer, as compared to AstraZeneca followed by AstraZeneca, where you only got a doubling. So, at least based on immunogenicity, there appears to be some data which we will need to examine in detail, but initial reports indicate that a combination might give us stronger immune responses than two of the same kind of vaccine. Now, this is also not something that is completely new, because this approach is used for one of the Ebola vaccines, where the first dose consists of an adenovirus vectored vaccine. It uses AD26, and the second dose is a modified Vaccinia Ankara based vaccine. That was the first vaccine to be licensed that had two heterologous vaccines in the combination. And we also have the example of Gamaleya, where one adenovirus is followed by a different adenovirus for the second dose.
So let's address the elephant in the room. Given the severe shortage of COVID vaccines that India is facing, should the center consider mixing and matching vaccines? And since the center has taken back the control of vaccinations, and since the center has now taken back control of vaccinations, it does have the power to greenlit studies on mixing vaccines. Having said this, experts in India are still on the fence on the mix and match of vaccines. While Dr. Mishra believes that mixing should not be the answer to address vaccine shortages, Dr. Kang stated that logistically it may make sense to mix vaccines since people will not be inconvenienced by shortages. However, both concluded that a mix of vaccines should only be considered if there is scientific data to back it up.
See, I don't see how shortage can be addressed by mixing the vaccine, because you don't have enough first dose, and that's what is called shortage. So we should have many vaccines. So let's say X percent of people are getting Covishield, then certain percent is getting Covaxin, then some is getting Sputnik or whatever is available. We can give. We don't have to mix. We have so many people unvaccinated. We can keep giving, laterally spreading the vaccine, and then once it is done, if the situation happens that you have now vaccinated everybody first dose, and the second dose of that vaccine is not available while something else is available, then we might consider mixing of the vaccine. I would then say that better to have another vaccine rather than waiting for the same thing to come, because it certainly it will be it's safe. There is no issue how much, and it certainly will not do any harm. So that means there will be some benefit out of that. But at the moment, mixing is not a great issue for India. I think we should try to spread laterally as much as possible single dose, and then whoever is requiring second dose now go back to the those people and keep giving second dose. We have enough number, all the vaccine can operate in their domain. And as I said, if it so happens that some people are not able to get the second dose of the same vaccine, then you consider mixing up that. But at the moment, I don't think India should go for mixing up the vaccine.
So, programmatically, it's always easier when you can give people any vaccine. When they come in for an immunization, when they're due for their second dose, if you have the option to use one of two vaccines, then that makes it easier. There's less of an issue of stockouts, less of a issue of inconveniencing people and making them come again and again to get their second dose. So, yes, it makes a lot of sense to make sure that we know that we are uh, ensuring that the immune response is good when you mix vaccines. So, I do think these kinds of studies need to be done. And if they actually lead to an improvement in the immune response, then we might want to think about changing the program entirely to be able to deliver the best combination that results in the longest and the strongest protection for people.
Keeping aside the unvaccinated or partially vaccinated population, let's now talk about those who have been fully vaccinated. Are 2 doses of vaccine enough to fight the virus? That's a big question that is coming up as the virus continues to mutate, triggering new waves in different parts of the world. A recent alarming spike in COVID cases also prompted countries like Bahrain to start giving the Pfizer vaccine as booster shots to the vulnerable population who were fully vaccinated with Chinese Sinopharm vaccines. According to a Wall Street Journal report as well, dozens of people in Dubai and Abu Dhabi who had been fully inoculated with the Sinopharm vaccine are being re-inoculated with Pfizer vaccine as a booster shot. Virologist Dr. Shahid Jamil explained that further doses may be needed, but a study should be done to prove this, given the lack of data regarding memory response of vaccines to the virus down the line. You can find a link to that interview in our show notes. In India, trials of a third booster dose of Covaxin have already begun and is being administered on people who have received both doses of Covaxin. With fears of a third wave already building up in India, should booster shots be the way forward for India to protect its vulnerable? Dr. Mishra stated that if a booster dose is being administered, it should be of a vaccine that is more effective than the one which has already been administered to the person. He added that more studies are required to see how effective booster doses are, especially against new variants.
So the booster shot is always a possibility. That depends on, you mentioned, whether the protection provided by the earlier vaccine is there or not. Most of the time, we do not know how long the protection will be. That only time will tell. So most of these vaccines are now in use for a few months' time, and they haven't crossed more than 6-7 months in most places. So we do not know. We certainly know that they protect for 6 months or maybe a little bit more. But if the cases do increase, that means that the protection is now reduced, and therefore the obvious thing is to give a booster of the same vaccine or booster of different vaccine. These are things, again, trials will come and they will come handy. That if booster is required, as I said, that we will know with the time. But if booster is required, which booster to give will probably be known. Like if some places the people have already started giving boosters, so that data will be useful. But at the moment, I think first round of vaccination itself, at least for supply and logistics of the country like India, so I think booster we will consider few months down the line. But it will be good to have some trials or some studies based on that. We can later take those decisions.
While we wait for the results of this mix and match vaccine trials, eligible and vulnerable people must not delay getting vaccinated with the vaccines that are offered to them right now. If you want to know more about COVID-19 vaccinations, the process, head over to the Quint Fit and the Quint websites. If you liked listening to this episode, please subscribe to The Big Story for episodic updates. We're available on Apple, Google Podcasts, Spotify, JioSaavn, and most of the other popular podcast streaming platforms. For other podcasts, please log on to the Quint website, and for any feedback, please shoot an email to podcast@thequint.com.
Thanks for listening. Log on to the Quint's website and check out our other podcasts.